Great, thank you very much, Nazir. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Thank you very much for attending this session. I'm looking very, very much forward to it. Let me just see if I can get my screen sharing going here. Nazir, there we go. Thanks.
I've just made you a host now, Chris, so you should be able to do that.
Fantastic, brilliant. Thank you so much, Nazir. That's great. So again, welcome and thank you very, very much for attending this session. Yes, I would like to share with you a little bit about my Amazon journey over the last few years. I guess the reason why you're attending the session is because you are already trading on Amazon, or indeed you have a very, very strong interest to trade on Amazon. We're going to cover a lot of issues that you might be facing, that you might be facing in starting up or in considering embarking on an Amazon journey. And if we could do that over the next hour, I'd be very grateful and appreciative. So the title of my session here today is Selling Online Eyes Wide Open. And it's very, very much a look at the opportunities that exist in selling on Amazon, but also a lot of the challenges that tend to be overlooked when people do start considering this journey. Our agenda today is going to be a brief introduction from me. We'll have a look at the wider e-commerce marketplace, and then we'll start focusing in the Amazon world itself. We'll have a look at the benefits of going to Amazon and indeed what can possibly go wrong and what you need to do to address those issues. I'll then hand back over to Nazir, who will be talking a little bit more about future Watford workshops, and then we can go for the Q&A. I'll try to keep it to an hour. There's a chance we might overrun by a few minutes. So first of all, thank you again for that introduction, Nazir. Yes, I'm the founder and owner of London-based eBooster Limited. I have about 25 years experience working with SMEs, with micro businesses, with very large organizations, public sector, government. So I've seen a lot within the digital space, within the .com space, and particularly over the last 5-6 years within the e-commerce space, as I say, on Amazon. I've been building e-commerce sites since 1994, and man, has the market ever changed. In some cases, it's a lot easier to get online. Back in the mid-90s, the question is, do you want a website? A what? People would say. Now you can't really run a business effectively without one, and indeed without some sort of digital e-commerce transaction facility in place. My company is London-based. We do about 100,000 orders a year. And we have 5-star ratings, over 7,000 reviews. So clearly we're doing something right. 60% of our trade on Amazon is in the UK, 30% in the EU, and 10% rest of world, Canada, US, Japan, Australia, and Singapore particularly. We've seen a lot during all those orders, a lot of good, a lot of bad. We've seen challenges, certainly with Brexit, with supply chain issues over the last couple of years, and obviously this week there are further international developments that are happening as well. So we'll see how those unfold in coming days and weeks. Now, I promised I'd show you a little bit more about the e-commerce marketplace. Generally, when businesses talk about getting online, having an e-commerce presence, everything seems to get lumped into one big e-commerce bucket, into one big category. But in reality, there's a whole plethora of activity that you can have. You can have something as simple as a website, a brochureware website where people need to get some information on the site and then pick up the phone and then do your transaction that way. That could be construed as very, very basic e-commerce. You can have straight through to a warehouse with several products behind it and staff and fulfilling orders on a daily basis and engaging with multiple couriers as well. Again, that's e-commerce. You tend to have different platforms. So a platform is something like an Amazon or an Alibaba, as we see from this graphic, or eBay or Wish. I'm sure you're familiar with all these names and platforms. And this is only a small snapshot of what is out there. There are dozens, if not hundreds of more very niche or indeed very global marketplaces to be, platforms to be considering. A marketplace tends to be equated with a country. So Amazon is a platform and they sell in the UK, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Canada, US, and it goes on. There's about 17, 18 different marketplaces or countries where they trade. And you can choose to specialize in either one or multiple or all of them, assuming you meet the local criteria in each country to have an account there. What I typically discuss with businesses looking at embarking on an e-commerce journey is that you have Amazon and pretty much everyone else. Why do I say that? Amazon is so big and their focus is being very much customer-centric, very much focused on the customer. I'm sure you've had this experience where, excuse me, maybe an order has gone wrong. You immediately get onto Amazon customer service, say, I want a refund, I want a return, I want an exchange, whatever the case might be. And immediately they will help you through that process, either by phone or through chat or email. They will help you through that process. They're very, very, very interested in making sure that you as a customer are satisfied and happy. The other platforms, yes, but not to the same extent. So if you are that focused on making sure the customer is happy, there has to be a lot of checks and balances behind that. So sellers like myself are put to these challenges of making sure our documentation is right, making sure our listings are right, making sure we've got the right intellectual property behind us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's very, very demanding. And we'll talk through a little bit more about what to expect from selling on Amazon over the course of this presentation. So really, while e-commerce is this really wide, vast world, today we're focusing just on the Amazon space, which in and of itself is huge, but only a component of the wider e-commerce world. I want to make this a little bit interactive. We have a good group of people on this call, and I would be very interested in hearing from you in chat. If you could spend 30 seconds and just type in the chat, and maybe Nazir, you could pick up the answers. What other marketplaces have attracted you? Are you looking at selling specifically in the UK? Are you looking at selling into the EU, across in North America, over in the Asian marketplace? If you could just spend a couple moments in chat and let me know if there's anything that particularly appeals to you. Looks like we have one feedback. Okay, US, Japan, and EU. Oh, yes, okay. Great, we'll talk about that. The reason why I smile is because you've got three very, very big challenges there. One, EU Brexit. So prior to us formally leaving the EU, it was very simple, very easy, shall we say, in inverted commas, to trade between the UK and the other 27 members of the EU. Japan, of course, it poses very, very interesting opportunities, particularly in the context of linguistics and language. We have resources on our team that can definitely help with that. But it's kind of a very different culture to be trading with. And the US, there are litigious issues there. So you're looking at making sure products are insured properly, selling into the US. And then Tina's saying just at the UK in moments, and I'm not sure about VAT in other countries. Absolutely. So one of the benefits of working with Amazon is that they've got huge bulk buying power. Of course, that extends to warehousing, it extends to their own internal staff, it extends to courier facilities, but also in some of the documentation in terms of the onboarding for VAT compliance in many of the other EU countries. We've gone through that. Now, that is something that Amazon does offer. It's not so much available in a number of the other platforms. India, I do not have experience with India because to sign up for Amazon India, you need a couple of things. You need a local GST number, you need a local partner, and you need a local mobile phone, so a SIM card from India. I do not have any partners in India that have helped me facilitate that, but it's something that I do wish to explore. Okay, great. Thank you very much for your feedback on that. Let's carry on to the next screen. There we go. So in the Amazon world itself, it is huge. We tend to think about, oh, let's just go and buy something on Amazon. Or, if you've been into central London, maybe you've seen some of the Amazon Fresh stores, or maybe If you've been around the city near Liverpool Street Station, there's an Amazon hair salon. I haven't tried that, but they are getting out into the physical world as well as the digital world. But actually, Amazon is a huge ecosystem, and we see some examples here. Amazon Fresh, as I just alluded to, Amazon Restaurants, meal kits, fashion, etc., etc., etc. There's probably a lot here, a lot of brands that you recognize and will have worked with before. This is the Amazon world. It's a huge, massive organization. What we're going to be dealing with is that little bit in the middle, that orange circle in the middle with the A and the swoosh underneath that. It's the Amazon smile, that little arrow that we've got. That's called the Amazon smile. And really, it's an arrow that goes, what's missing from this graphic is a letter A on one side and a letter Z on the other side. Amazon like to think that they can offer everything from A to Z. And of course, they make you happy too, so hence the smile. But this little area here is called Seller Central. Seller Central. So in the Amazon world, you have fundamentally two streams that you can interact with. One is where you're a very, very large brand, household brand, maybe a producer of shoes or TVs or something like that. And you sell vast amounts of stock, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of units to Amazon, and they represent that to customer base, people like you and I. That's known as Vendor Central. They take the stock, they send it to Amazon, Amazon look after selling it to the customer. Great, that's done. Seller Central is the space that I tend to play in. This is where you've got tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of individual sellers, anyone from very, very small micro businesses operating at home with maybe their warehouse is a couple of boxes in the living room, or straight up through to much larger, much more mature organizations with established warehouses and inventory control systems and staff and so on and so forth that then supply into Amazon. So we're in the seller central space. That's what I'm going to be focusing on today. Now, as I alluded to before, we've got a lot of experience. 100,000 orders means that we've seen a lot. There's all sorts of customer issues that do come up. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong. There's some funny stories that we've got as well. It means that we need to have a good, robust system in place. There comes a point where you can manage things on a manual basis, but then you have to plug in some software and let the automation take over. We spend about £2,000 a month in different software products that plug into the Amazon account, some handling customer service, some handling reporting, P&L calculation, and so on and so forth. It's quite an extensive operation. Having said that, we also have a number of dials and levers available to us. So imagine flying a plane. You've got all sorts of dials and levers that can do your course correction and keep you stable and parallel with the ground. We have the same sorts of tools on Amazon. And as long as you follow the compliance, as long as you play by their rules, you're fine. You work with Amazon. It feels sometimes you're working a bit against them because some of the rules are a little bit frustrating. But as long as you're working with Amazon, you're able to maintain fantastic ratings, as we have. So you can see down at the bottom, policy compliance, we're good. If we have issues, if we're violating certain policies, if we're getting orders out too slowly, or maybe some of our products, we've got well over, there's just an example, there's 1,748 products in our catalog. We've actually grown since I took this graphic. But if some of your products are maybe not satisfactory to customers, then you're going to find this green policy compliance rating slipping into yellow. When it slips from yellow to red, and if you haven't done anything about it, you're in real danger, and that is a risk that you will lose your Amazon account and you will not be able to regain it. They look at directors of companies, credit cards, addresses that are used to set up accounts, IP addresses, MAC addresses, algorithms that track general behavior patterns, and so on and so forth. They will be able to determine if you have multiple accounts or if you've been shut down and have tried to create a new account. You just won't be able to sell on their platform again. Why? The reason is it comes back to Amazon's commitment to the customer. They do not want problematic sellers. So they want sellers to fall into line, deliver a decent service, comply with Amazon rules, and make the customer happy. The other side of that is that there's a huge amount of pressure and work on us to ensure that we're actually following those rules. So I learned the hard way. Even though I've got .com and e-commerce experience dating back to the mid-90s, I only started selling on Amazon, as I say, about 6 years ago. And there are plenty of areas, and things have tightened up since then, but there are plenty of ways that we can go wrong. Biggest issue is pricing. I made some mistakes on my products early on, and a lot of my products tend to be very low margin products. So 100,000 orders a year sounds really impressive, but when you're talking about 10p, 20p, 50p margins on a lot of these products, you need to have a look again at what your turnover is and how you're spending that money, again, to automate and for resource on the team to make sure that things are operating smoothly and that you can ensure continued profits on the way. At the beginning, it's very exciting. You log in, you add a bunch of products, and I'm simplifying things here, you add a bunch of products, you start selling. Amazon sells that product to the customer. They charge the customer, the money comes into kind of a holding account that you have with Amazon. That money is net of their Amazon fees, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the conversation. So there's a net amount that gets held in an account for you. And then there's a disbursement to your bank account every 2 weeks. When that money lands, you look at it in one big chunk and you say, that's great. What am I going to do? I'm going to buy more stock. I'm going to hire people. I'm going to invest in resources. But you really got to look at whether you're actually profitable in every sale. Things like Amazon fees, storage costs, advertising, customer fraud, returns of goods that we can't resell because there's some damage to it or something like that. That's a loss. All these different issues we need to be looking at. I thought it would be easy. I don't know how many of you have seen those great videos on YouTube of the advertising that pops up saying, make $1 million a day from the beach selling on Amazon. It's really, really simple. It isn't. It isn't like that. It's a lot of work. I find them up early in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, dealing with customer issues, and I'm there throughout the day. Fortunately, I've got a great team behind me, and we can cascade a lot of the tasks and share a lot of the tasks between us. But Amazon doesn't care if you're sick or if you're on holiday or if the family is visiting. You need to be able to deal with issues as they arise and respond to customers in an extremely timely way within 24 hours. There is a certain amount of leeway there where you can write back to the customer and say, oh, we're looking into your query, allow us to come back to you tomorrow. But I wouldn't use that too often. Really, they're keen to make sure that the customer is very, very happy, because ultimately, if they're not, they will go back to Amazon, escalate the issue, and that will be a negative mark on your seller account. As I say, I was not paying attention to details. I got into trouble with some of the listings. And also, Amazon have many different rules. So one of the really great things about Amazon is that there is a consistent platform all the way around the world. So when I log into my UK platform, it's fundamentally the same as if I was to log into US or Canada or into some of the non-English language markets. I can have my default language when I log into my Japanese platform as English, when I log into my French platform as English, and so on. So I see roughly the same thing. Now, US, UK, and Germany are very far advanced in their platforms. Australia, not so much so. Singapore is one of the newer marketplaces. Turkey is brand new. So you don't quite see everything, but there is a core consistency there from one platform to another. That makes it easy, and that makes it so appealing to start selling. But then when you start looking at, oh my goodness, how am I going to ship some goods into Germany, for example, to sell in the EU marketplace? You then get tangled up into all the Brexit-related issues. And my advice now, when you're looking at that, is don't jump to secure stock just yet until you've got the full life cycle and you've figured out everything, the customs, the shipping, the timelines involved as well. I'm not sure if any of you have sent Christmas presents to family or colleagues in the EU. I know that some of the packages that I've sent in November have only just arrived in the last couple of weeks to their destinations throughout Europe. So plan everything out and make sure you're confident about each step before you make that financial commitment. Persevere and get it right. So another check-in here with the group. I'd like to know roughly what size you are. Are you startup? Are you considering? Are you sole proprietorship? Are you already an SME? Are you secretly tapping in from Amazon? What would describe your business best? You just throw that in chat. That would be great. I'll give another 30 seconds here. Okay. Initial stage not trading, great. I think it's a very, very good time for you to be information gathering at this point, because that will allow you the most time to plan. Great. Tina, we're seeing that a lot as well, that we have high street businesses and even professional businesses from home or other offices or whatever, looking for other revenue streams as well. Indeed, looking for other challenges, looking for opportunities to grow. One of my clients right now is a high street hospitality business, and they're very, very comfortable with how they've grown the business. They're very happy with where they are, and they're now looking to diversify and look at some other revenue opportunities. That's great. That's great. Okay, thank you. Next slide. Now, let's talk about the case for migrating to Amazon. So those of you who are attending the session here as an information gathering, I think you're doing it at the right time. As you know, in retail, the big selling time is Christmas, Q4, and indeed the other holidays that happen around Q4 as well. That is the most important selling time, and I'm sure you've heard the stats that most retailers achieve 60, 70, 80% of their revenues of the year just in those last 2 or 3 months before the end of the year. Backtracking from there, considering your business case, your business plan, getting registered on Amazon, listing your first products, getting them bedded in, dealing with maybe some of the unfamiliarities of dealing with Amazon customer service issues and so on and so forth, it will take you a few months. Typically, to stock for retail for the Q4 holiday season, you really need to get stock into Amazon no later than about, I would say, August timeframe. So from there, you're taking these steps at a really, really good time. And if you wanted to continue selling on Amazon or continue your Amazon journey, the next 3 or 4 months would be a real, real help for you. You'll need to start thinking about what products. There are some products that are very heavily protected, some categories that are very heavily protected. I'm sure as a buyer, you will have navigated to various categories: grocery, health products, tools, automotive, household, baby, toys, and so on. A number of these categories are available to any new seller, so household goods, for example. A number of these categories are restricted or gated, and you need to go through an ungating process. So it'll be different from category to category, so I'm not going to belabor this, but fundamentally, you need to be able to demonstrate to Amazon if you want to sell in grocery, if you want to sell health products, if you want to sell baby products, that you're qualified to do so. And there are ways of doing that. Also, really interesting is toys. Because toys are such a huge demand leading up to Christmas, Amazon do not want, first of all, their warehouses flooded with toys. And secondly, they do not want customer complaints, dodgy toys, toys that have not been properly certified or safety checked or whatever. So you need to prove Amazon's selling experience by roughly August, before the Amazon algorithms will kick in and will say either yes, you're qualified to sell toys, or no, you're not for this holiday season. So if you're considering selling toys for the Christmas season and you have not sold on Amazon before, I would assess that very, very carefully and plan very, very carefully the next 6 months. Not impossible, but that's just something that I would flag to you. So let me talk about this product. Here's a shameless plug for maple syrup just before Pancake Day next week. I'm Canadian, been here for 20 years. And of course, one would expect that I'm selling Canadian products and maple syrup. There is a supplier that I have who I happened to meet at a Canadian event, oh gosh, about 5 or 6 years ago. And we were chatting back and forth. He was interested in expanding availability to his product. He wanted to get it into a number of the high-end retail shops. And one thing led to another, and we said, look, why don't we put this maple syrup on my Amazon account and see if we can get some traction for it. So we did that. There were about 3 or 4 different variations at the time, and we got them listed in the grocery category. We went through all the ungating process and so on. Grocery category at the time had about 800,000 different products, and we got this product up at the 500th most popular product, so 0.01%, whatever it works out to be. So right up there, not just of maple syrup and maple-based products and sweeteners, but all of the products in grocery on Amazon at the time. We were right up there. What that did for him was that it enabled him, first of all, to sell on Amazon and get out to a wide consumer base here in the UK, but also to demonstrate sales traction. He could then take that to his other customer accounts and say, look, we're doing really well on Amazon. It is public information. You can see the customer feedback that we're getting. You can see the volumes of sales that we're getting. You can see a bunch of other important information to help you make your B2B buying decision for our product. And this is a relationship that's carried on now for 5 years. So that is just one really good example of using Amazon as a launch pad for some of your other products. Of course, there is that other bullet point right there, second one from the bottom. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, more people are shopping on Amazon and indeed on e-commerce than ever before. I vividly remember the Prime Minister getting up about a year and a half ago and saying, don't go to the high street shops, buy online. So there's a ready-made market for you. If you had been considering going online maybe 2.5 years ago and were worried about the take-up and worried about the interest of whether people really trusted the online shopping experience, I would say that all that has changed. And again, just like my example back in the mid-90s of trying to sell websites and now really needing a website as a core business tool, I would say that e-commerce has gone from maybe should I, maybe not, to actually this is a core business tool that we require. Okay, checkpoint again. In terms of the products that you might consider selling online, I don't think the first question is applicable given the feedback that I had in the previous chat, but would you be willing to share the types of products that you would like to sell? Maybe a category, if you want to be very general. I don't want you to give away any secrets, but if you want to share, please go ahead. Either a category type, or do you have a niche, or do you know someone who has a supply of products that you want to represent their products online? Do you have a particular passion? If you want to share that sort of information in chat, please do so. I'll leave that up for 30 seconds. Okay, that's great, Tina. Packaging and stationery. Okay, great. That's very interesting. I would say it's a good product for a couple of reasons. First of all, there's going to be demand, as we've just been talking about. There's this huge demand migration to e-commerce, and it's not just receiving a thing, a book, an item of furniture, whatever. There's all these new emerging markets that are coming up: the food delivery, monthly subscriptions, all these sorts of things that are coming up, where the product is going to require packaging. And if you can fulfill that need for packaging, that's great. The great thing there is that it can be light. I know that some packaging can be heavy as well. So that's a consideration for the weight and cost of postage. But it's not a breakable product, let's say the way a mug would be a breakable product. So that's quite good. Going on to bar equipment, absolutely, absolutely. I don't think that the trend, well, I think that the pandemic has made people think twice about going out. So if you do go out now, I think you'll want a very unique experience. You'll want a very enjoyable experience. Because if you don't have that experience, you're going to say, well, what's the point of going out? I can just do something at home. So I think, Pavel, you're looking at both markets there. I think you're looking at the business market, which is established buyers that are saying, look, we just want to up our game a little bit. And maybe the home market as well, that's saying, we're not quite ready to go out, or we're not really ready to go out frequently. I hope that's helpful. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So in terms of what you can be doing in terms of your decisions, you can do three things, and I'll explain each one in a moment. You can do nothing in terms of migrating over to Amazon or indeed any e-commerce facility. You can go for a blue sky approach, or you can go for a Goldilocks zone. So first of all, do nothing. One is you can attend this webinar and do nothing. That's absolutely fine. This webinar is all about knowledge, about information gathering. Maybe you have some other people, stakeholders, suppliers, et cetera, to be discussing with, and maybe you're going to find that it's not right for you for whatever reason. That's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. What we are finding is that a lot of retail sales have been extremely badly affected, of course, by the pandemic. I don't know what it's been like for you in Watford, but certainly in my region, central London, there's so many shops, high street shops that are empty, and I'm not sure if they're going to be coming back. So there are a lot of factors to consider when considering migrating over to Amazon. There's a blue sky approach. If you currently operate a B2B model, you could try selling directly to the consumer. So if you have product already and you're already selling to businesses, there is a chance there that you can go directly to the consumer. The risk there is that you're going to be cutting out that stream of business activity that you're doing already. So you might want to watch that. That's conversations that we've had with some of our clients, where they've said, look, we recognize that we need an Amazon presence, but not to the detriment of our other business. We had one fashion-based client that wanted to put about 10% of their business on Amazon. They're a £20 million a year company. They wanted to put about 10% there, but they did not want to alienate the 90% of their business that they do through B2B relationships. So we had lots of conversations about how to do that and how to manage the messaging that goes out to the consumer, not to turn them off the other B2B channels, but just to give them that choice and that balance. And it would be up to the consumer to make that ultimate decision. There is, of course, a Goldilocks zone, where you keep your existing sales channels in place and you migrate and sell directly to consumers. So that's a little bit about what I was just discussing. You can increase your sales and profits through Amazon selling, and you can go for middle ground by migrating a portion of your sales over. So whether that's looking at your entire 100% range and saying, right, we want to put this bit on Amazon, or indeed certain product lines which may not be profitable, bringing in a third party. So you want to sell only those products on Amazon and allow the rest of your products to go out to third parties. There are a number of different ways you can do this. So coming back to the guru approach to selling on Amazon is easy, isn't it? And all those videos, the advertisements on YouTube will try to convince you of that. So vendors of Amazon training courses want to make you think that it is easy. There is a lot of good software out there, which is relatively inexpensive, and they give access to some very good training courses, and I can share that information with you later. But I would also be very, very wary about anyone who's saying, spend £1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 pounds with me, and I'll get you set up on Amazon. That you need to have the right appetite for that. So I'll just be very, very careful. If you are wanting to learn about selling, there are a number of free podcasts and YouTube channels that I can pass to you as well. People based here in the UK who know what they're doing, who have a lot of very, very sensible experience, and don't mess around with compliance. That's one big issue. You have to adhere to Amazon compliance to be successful on Amazon. So let's talk about the things that can go wrong. Speaking of compliance, I have a product here, and I hope you can see it in the top right corner. There's a face mask, and there's a title here. This title of this product says Perfect Flags, Union Jack flag, 3 foot by 2 foot medium, etc., etc. And then we go on to explain what the flag looks like, 90 centimeters by 60 centimeters, 3 by 2 feet, and so on. That's a flag. It's a Union Jack flag. That's our national flag. It's not a face mask, and certainly not with this graphic on it. We sell, as I mentioned before, around 2,000 different products. And we have some software that monitors all this, but we also have humans on the case who monitor each product. In many cases, if you're selling competing products, we don't have the IP rights, excuse me, to this product. We have the resale rights to it, but we don't have the IP rights. So that means that we have other sellers that are competing with us and selling this. And there's always jostling for position, who has the best price, who has the best quality, all that sort of stuff. Well, wouldn't you know it that one of the other sellers didn't know what they were doing. So when they came to edit the listing for this flag, they put up the wrong image. They put up these images of this face mask, and you can see in the smaller images below, it wasn't just one image that they took down, it was multiple. We had nice pictures of flags that I actually took and put up there. So we're dealing with one of the strange kind of scenarios at Amazon where they require us to be exacting with our relationship with them, with the changes, anything that we do. And yet sometimes they'll let changes come through without double checking. Let me give you an example. If we had a listing where we wanted to fix a spelling mistake, for example, and maybe be a little bit more accurate in what we'd originally put up, often Amazon will come back to us and ask us to prove that. They're going to ask us to show a picture with the barcode clearly visible and so on and so forth, and prove that we have this product and that we can make that change for a spelling mistake. In this particular case, they blindly allowed someone else to upload images that were completely unrelated. I mean, anyone can see that this is not a flag, and it's certainly not a Union Jack flag. Maybe there are other products where it wouldn't be so obvious, but in this one, it is so extremely obvious. And this is one of the frustrating things that you need to deal with and you need to respond to, because what happens then is a customer might order this product, and different customers shop in different ways. I know, I shop in different ways. Do I buy this product based on the image, or do I buy it based on the text? So if I, as a seller, have put flags into the Amazon warehouse, and you, as a buyer, buy based on the text, then you're going to be happy because you're going to receive a flag. You saw a flag advertised, you receive the flag that you bought. Great. However, if you buy based on image and you're thinking, well, I'm expecting to receive a face mask, and all of a sudden you get a flag, you're going to raise a complaint. This isn't it. This isn't the product isn't as described on the website. And then that comes back to haunt me as a seller. It took us 6 weeks and probably around 20 man-hours of effort to get this issue resolved. Fine. Let's talk about some of the other compliance issues. Hazardous materials, hazmat. So let me take a step back here. When you sell on Amazon, let's say we're focused only on the seller central, so that orange circle from the earlier graphic that we saw. You have two options. You can fulfill to a customer out of your warehouse. It might be your kitchen, might be a lockup someplace that we've got, might be an actual warehouse with staff and inventory systems. Or you can choose to fulfill out of Amazon, meaning that you send a quantity of product to Amazon and they put it on the shelves. Now, you don't have one specific shelf. I don't have a Chris McNeil shelf there. I have 20,000 units of stock in the UK that are based in a whole bunch of different warehouses in Birmingham, in Luton, I think in Watford, in Scotland, a whole bunch of different places. And I don't have dedicated shelves. I've got a bit here and a bit there and a bit in the other part of the warehouse and so on. That's just how Amazon algorithms work. When you're talking about hazardous materials, so what would that be? Batteries, chemicals, foodstuffs, potentially. That maple syrup bottle, it's a glass bottle, it could break, and it's a sticky product. If you have that broken, other sellers don't want to have maple syrup dripping on their household items, for example, because all this inventory is all mixed, sellers all mixed together. So Amazon will require you to adhere to certain compliance issues. For example, our foods will go into a specific warehouse. If we were selling very large items, microwaves, fridges, that sort of thing, kitchen goods, they would go to a different warehouse that was capable of handling these very, very big issues. If we were selling a product with a battery in it, well, that would be in a separate warehouse, in a separate location. It would have to be prepped in a different way. And also batteries and certain chemicals you can't send through certain postal services as well. So we've got those issues to consider. CE marks, this is the safety marking that is standard across the EU, and we used to participate in CE marking. We're now, the UK has its own safety mark called a CA mark, which is increasingly prevalent and increasingly popular. But a lot of your products will have to be safety certified in some way, shape, or form. So if you choose to buy from China, for example, and have it shipped in, a major step in that process is going to be checking your product, getting it certified to UK compliance initially, and indeed, if you're looking at selling in other marketplaces, to those marketplace standards, and then bringing your product in. Safety documentation, we've touched on that. Compliance issues. I'm sure you've bought products with, maybe written inserts in it that you need to ensure are your products as well if you're selling the types of items that would attract safety concerns. VAT registrations we touched on in one of the chats earlier in this call. And then ensuring that compliance issues do not reoccur, as in the example that I gave you with this flag and the face mask. Sometimes these things happen, and particularly if you have a lot of different products, you're watching a lot of products and making sure that the issue doesn't happen in the first place, or if it does, allocating time and resource to correcting that issue. So we talked briefly about intellectual property. This is something that Amazon, of course, takes very, very seriously, quite rightly. You'll probably have to prove ownership of the products that you sell. And of course, many Amazon sellers make mistakes in this area. I have one client now that is struggling because she has a fashion product. It's an accessory, and it is a product that is produced in China in the millions, and the warehouse will sell that to a number of different brands. She is one of those brands, but and it's perfectly fine for her to apply her own brand, and she's bundling it in a particular way and so on and so forth. It's perfectly fine for her to do that. But because fundamentally the product is so similar, because it's produced in the same factory, to what other sellers are selling, Amazon feels that the other sellers have precedence because they started to sell their products first. So she is now struggling to get Amazon to recognize her brand and her unique packaging around this particular product, which she has only recently introduced to Amazon. It can be a bit of a challenge. Data protection and contracts. You must get your data protection rights right from the start. Why? Because you are transacting with customers. So an Amazon customer is not your customer, it's Amazon's customer. And you have limited access to that customer. Limited access could be for the purpose of fulfilling an order. So if you ship out of your own warehouse, you'll obviously need that customer's name and phone number and email address and their street address. If a customer has a query with you, how do I do this? Or the product became damaged, or can I get an invoice or whatever? You'll have to have certain access to certain information. But really, there's not many other options that you can take there to engage with the customer. It's Amazon's customer, not your customer. So there will be some constraints there around your terms of service and your agreement with Amazon, but also in a wider data protection world, that you will have access to this data. It's just you're not allowed to do anything with it. You really need to be compliant with GDPR, and the Information Commissioner's Office will have a lot more information about that. And you'll have walkthroughs on how to get you set up with GDPR and ICO registration and so on and so forth. You need to prove to Amazon that you're going to handle customer data correctly. So that requires a little bit of internal management of securing your laptop, securing your phone, securing access to data, making sure that you've got any data or any third-party information correctly locked down and password protected and so on and so forth. Amazon is going to require you to sign a very long contract. It's something like 20 pages long, something ridiculous like that. So I do think that you should go through it. Don't be scared of it, because lots and lots of sellers are doing this in the tens of thousands, but just be aware. Go through it, read it, make sure you understand what you're getting into. So one particularly interesting area is when we have about 95% of our stock in Amazon warehouses, and we allow FBA, fulfilled by Amazon, so Amazon Prime for the customer, to handle the shipping of those products. We have a small quantity of our items in our own warehouse, so that's FBM, fulfilled by merchants. So when an order comes through, we take it off the shelf, we package it, we send it off. Interestingly, according to Amazon Terms of Service, if you have a customer query about an FBA order, it came damaged, it never came, it was left with a neighbor, whatever the case is, you cannot really intervene in solving that problem. It really has to be Amazon support to solve that problem. If it's merchant fulfilled, you can intervene, and indeed you're expected to intervene, because you'll have access to any shipping information, when it was sent, any tracking numbers, that sort of thing. So it's a bit of a learning curve to know where to step in and where not to step in and redirect the customer back to Amazon support. Okay. So based on what I've said so far, can you share with me what you think maybe the biggest threat, the biggest opportunity would be for you and your journey with Amazon, wanting to sell on Amazon, or indeed any other marketplace? If you could put that in the chat, I'll give you sort of 30 seconds or so to comment, please. Okay, I'm not seeing any feedback. Maybe we can reserve that for the Q&A later on. Okay, moving on. So going along to a couple, we got one bit of feedback here. Inventory management, absolutely. Pavel, that is absolutely. So this is an area that we have really struggled with. We have had to develop bespoke internal tools. You've got a couple things happening there. So if your products are at Amazon warehouses, their inventory management tools are pretty good. You always know what stock you have available for sale on an SKU by SKU basis. You know what is pending, what is in customer baskets, what is being transferred from one warehouse to another. However, if you've got product in your own warehouse and you want to sell that product on Amazon, on other Amazon marketplaces, you're having to ship internationally, on eBay, on the range, and so on and so forth, it can be very challenging to make sure that you know how much stock you actually have. We're not really set up for a warehouse. That's something that we've done out of necessity for a bunch of reasons sort of a year and a half ago. And we have been caught off guard a couple of times where we have sold out of a particular product, but there is still quantity available for sale in one of our other marketplaces and one of our other platforms. So that is something to be concerned about. I see also your Jungle Scout question. I do not have a lot of experience with Jungle Scout. My very limited experience is very positive, and I know that a lot of other sellers swear by Jungle Scout. It's a full service tool, but I can't comment very specifically on the benefits of that tool. I've only heard good things about it. Okay, let me go into inventory performance. The IPI, the Inventory Performance Index, is a score that Amazon awards out of 1,000. This is the score that is used as an indicator in how well you're managing your account. You, and indeed your inventory allocation. So when you sign up for an Amazon account initially, you'll be kind of at a junior level account. You'll be given a chance to prove yourself. We've been around for a number of years now, and we're selling pretty well, pretty reliably. So Amazon have progressively every year given us increased levels of stock availability and storage space availability in their warehouses. So we started off maybe with a limitation of 1,000 units of stock. So if we have 10 different products, then that's 100 different units maximum of that product you can put in. And we're now somewhere in the order of 30,000 or 40,000. And indeed, other sellers are bigger than that. In some of our other marketplaces, Australia and in Canada, we are much less. It's almost like we have new accounts there. We're limited to maybe 1,000 units worth of stock in those marketplaces. Why? Because our throughput in those marketplaces isn't as fast. The nature of our product that we sell is, as you can probably guess by the flag that I showed you earlier, it's all Union Jack products, souvenirs, keychains, that sort of thing. It tends to be of interest to a UK marketplace and indeed somewhat to an EU marketplace as well. Maybe not so much in other marketplaces. So the nature of the product that we have is a fast seller here, but a slow seller in other marketplaces. But Amazon kind of turns a blind eye to that, and they say, well, okay, that's nice, but the reality is that when you stock product in your Canadian marketplace, it's not flying out the door very quickly. So we're looking at you, Chris, and saying your turnover isn't that fast. So if your turnover isn't that fast, you're keeping a lot of stock in the warehouse, we're not really going to grant you more warehouse space. So our IPI score is mid-range in Canada and Australia. It's very high in the UK and the EU, because generally when product goes in, it turns around pretty quickly and goes out the door very soon after that. And we're constantly replenishing stock. Amazon loves that because don't forget, they make a percentage on every sale, and they make money on the shipping and getting that product out the door. So they want more sales. They want more products leaving their warehouse. Let's go to the next screen. One of the consequences of a low IPI score, you're going to have higher storage costs, because don't forget, there's a whole range of charges that you can have when selling on Amazon. One of those is going to be storage fees. The moment you put stock into an Amazon warehouse, they are going to determine the size of that, the amount of space that takes up in the warehouse. They will charge you accordingly for that. Now, we have 20,000 units of stock at any given time. Our fees tend to be, and they tend to be small items that, as I say, keychains and fridge magnets and that sort of thing. So we would pay around £200 a month in storage fees. Not bad. When you spread that out over each unit, well, it's maybe a fraction of a penny across each unit. But the other implication is that if your stock isn't moving, you have a low IPI score. The low IPI score restricts your ability to send in stock. And indeed, coming back to the example of toys, with my IPI score, the way it is right now, I cannot put toys into my Canadian marketplace. Not yet, until I accelerate the movement of stock through the Canadian marketplace. In terms of the UK marketplace, not an issue. And indeed, we do very, very well from the sale of toys in the fourth quarter of the year. I just noticing the time, I'm going to speed up a little bit here. So in terms of what you need to do to be prepared to sell on Amazon, let's hit a couple of these highlights here. You've got to be prepared. So you need to know what your product is. You need to know how much time you have available. You need to know how much time you can commit. You need to balance against other business activities, family life, other personal objectives that you've got. It is a commitment. As I mentioned, I've got a team of about 3 or 4 people who are looking exclusively at our Amazon accounts on a day-to-day basis. And it takes time. They're almost full-time, each one of them, on this activity. You need to make an investment in Amazon selling. So be prepared to need to buy stock. You'll need to pay for advertising when the product is actually listed on Amazon. You'll probably need to be prepared to pay for storage fees, particularly if you don't quite get the product, or if you want the product in there, but you know that a little bit later there's going to be a demand in a different, season of the year for it. So you have to pay for storage fees. You're going to have to sustain customer fraud. There are plenty of people out there who will order something and claim that they've never received it. It was broken. It was, delivered to a neighbor. It was lost. Whatever the case is, that's a fact of life. Okay? So what happens in that case? They will request a refund. Amazon will grant that refund. That will be debited from your seller account. You've lost not only the sale, but the product itself. You can't recover it. So you've got to build that into your overheads. As I mentioned with the flag and mask experience, there are crazy things that do happen that you have no control over. It's an Amazon algorithm, or it's someone in the seller support team that maybe didn't quite understand what a request was, and your product comes offline. Your product gets changed. Anything can happen, and that's something that you need to be able to respond to very, very quickly. Returns. I alluded to returns a moment ago. One of the issues with selling on Amazon is that you do not get to retain your customer. If it was on your own website, or perhaps even eBay or some other marketplaces and platforms, you could at least have a dialogue with the customer. The customer could say, hey, this came broken, or it's the wrong color, or this or that. And you could try to propose a solution. Well, look, I'll send you a free replacement. I'll do this, I'll do that. I'll help you in this way. I'll help explain how it works, whatever the case is. You don't have that in Amazon. Here's an example of some of the recent emails that I've gotten. I just get an email notification that says, we've processed a refund request. So I don't know what these are for, but fortunately we have a very, very low refund rate. You can see there's 4 in the space of 2 or 3 days there. So that's quite good. We do about 200 orders a day. Yeah, some are going to come back. Most of these, fortunately, are from honest customers. So it'll be their genuine mistake. And they're going to say, look, really, really sorry, I bought it too late. I needed it for a certain date. I just can't give it as a gift anymore. I had to find a different solution. Or I'm sorry, I didn't read the listing properly. I bought a small and I needed a large, or I needed a blue, but I got a red, or whatever the case might be. So they will be honest. They will take the product in its original packaging, put it back in the Amazon box, and send it back to Amazon, and it will go back on the shelf for resale. I'll lose a little bit of money, but at least I haven't lost the product itself. Again, this comes back to Amazon wanting to be the most customer-centric organization on the planet. So that's why it happens. It's they make that decision first, and then you see it on the back end in your seller account after. Potential issues with returns, we've got to think about this as well. In my model, it's great. Most of my returns, I don't get that many returns, as I've said, but most of my returns are resellable. So they just go back into the Amazon warehouse. It's a bit of a nuisance, and got to figure out the accounting behind it, but fundamentally I can resell it. There are some products that come back which Amazon looks at and says, either outright it's broken. So we sell a lot of fridge magnets that are quite delicate, so they are subject to breakage. Amazon will send those back to us. Of course, I'm going to receive them and say, well, right, environmental impact, not great, but it's broken. What can I do? I've got to somehow responsibly recycle it or whatever the case might be. Or indeed, Amazon may not know. They might look at a packaging that is in perfect condition, but it's just slightly open. Well, fine, you can reseal that. That's just a standard manufacturer process. Just reseal it and put it back in. So they don't always judge 100% correctly as well. But the point is that you need to be able to receive those returns. I receive them to home because, fortunately, I don't get that many. It's a box every couple of weeks. And there are that many, about 3 or 4 different products that come back. But in your case, it might be different. So you need to build in that time just to inspect the product and determine whether or not you're going to resell it, and if it's resellable at all. If it isn't resellable, sometimes what we do is, if the package is beyond repair, but the product is fundamentally safe and fine and sound, what we will do is pop it onto eBay. So take a photo of it, show where the damage is, so it's very, very clear to the customer, but we'll sell it as a damaged or returned or a second product. We'll be very, very honest about it and highlight to the customer where the potential damage is. And in some cases, the customer is going to say, well, look, I really want something that says a gift. The packaging has to be perfect. Or actually, I just want the product itself and I don't care about the packaging. I get a great discount just because I'm accepting some slightly damaged and dog-eared packaging. And in other cases, we'll take it to a local charity shop and say, look, we just don't want the overheads of this. It can be resold in a charity shop. They'll get the benefit of it, and we'll not worry so much about the time involved in handling that return. Okay, I am just a little conscious of time, so I'm going to save this question for maybe the Q&A later on, but do have a think about it. If you are a reseller, will you be able to get support from your supplier or from the manufacturer when you really need it? So that is customer queries coming in and saying, I'm not really a reseller, I'm not really an expert in this. I've got to ask the expert, I've got to ask the manufacturer. Or indeed, what is your contractual relationship with the supplier, with the manufacturer? If you get a damaged product back, can you send that back to the supplier for a credit? Think about those and we can deal with them during Q&A. So again, considering your time, really Amazon is a complete line of business for you and a complete project for you. So do think about how you're going to segment your time to be able to go onto Amazon. If you've got half a dozen products, a couple hundred units of each one, that's not really as big a time commitment as, say, 2,000 products and 20,000 units all told. So there's going to be a balance there, and that balance is going to have to be right for you. You'll need to think about client-side project manager. So who's going to be working with Amazon, or who's going to be working with an intermediary who works with Amazon. An accounts person. So your accountant will have to be comfortable with certainly UK VAT, EU VAT if we choose to sell there, tax regimes in other countries, and also understanding how to unpick the Amazon sales accounts. As you can imagine, they're complex. I get sales accounts with thousands of lines in them. I use some intermediary software to put them into Xero, and my accountants are fantastic. They understand the Amazon world extremely well and the e-commerce world extremely well. But just have that conversation with your accountant as well, and make sure that they're willing to include that in their service too, because not all accountants are as familiar with how Amazon delivers its reports. You need to think about your warehousing, your product, your consistency of product, supply chains, which are an absolute nightmare these days, costs, looking at what future costs would be. You might have a whole bunch of great product that's selling really, really well now, but you need to try to predict what the cost of that product and getting that product in from maybe China, maybe someplace else, will be in 6 months' time. Who knows? The world is an ever-changing place right now. If you do take on third-party services, it would be services like intellectual property, so lawyers who can help with your branding, with protecting your IP, particularly if it's a product that you've created yourself. With brand representation, so that's a slightly different service. What is the communications behind your brand? How are you going to promote your brand? How are you going to get your brand listed on Amazon as well? That's a whole different service that Amazon allows, called brand registry. Product safety compliance, we touched on that earlier in the session. Fiscal representation for non-UK markets, particularly when dealing with the EU. France and Germany now have requirements for declaring your product packaging. So we're going through those registrations now. We need a special registration number with both France and Germany to state what type of packaging we use, or hazardous materials, whatever, all for recycling and for environmental protections. And once we get those registration numbers, we'll have to declare them to Amazon. So that's a separate step of activity that you need to consider. And of course, your taxation and VAT services. You might consider automation tools. So I alluded to that at the beginning of this presentation. We have about a dozen different automation tools, and they cost money. Some are quoted in US dollars, and some in sterling, and some in euro. You need to think about that and how you're going to pay and whether it's right. A lot of these have free trials or for low levels of activity. So for example, we use a product called Feedback 5, which we've been using now for a number of years. We pay for that. We pay a couple $100 a month for that. But there is a free version for a very limited number of transactions. And this is a tool that does feedback solicitation. So it'll email the customer within Amazon and GDPR rules that we discussed earlier, and ask the customer for feedback about a product or how we responded as a seller, whatever the case might be. So there are tools that will be zero charge, but others that will come with a charge. So you need to think about whether that is important for you straight away, or something you can put into the future. Now, to set expectations, if you haven't traded on Amazon before, if you have, please do not try to jump in and set up a new account. So see if you can resurrect your previous account, look at your previous account. Who owns that? Is it you, or is it a corporate entity? Do you want to be trading with a different company? Think about this very, very carefully, because Amazon, as I mentioned earlier, will have a number of algorithms in place to check who is trying to set up a duplicate account. And you'll be blocked and potentially have both accounts suspended. And it will cost thousands of dollars from a reputable account suspension expert to get your account back. So be very, very careful about that. However, if you haven't traded on Amazon before, think about who is going to be the entity trading. Is it you as a sole proprietorship? Is it you as an incorporated company? Is it a charity? Get all your ducks in a row, get your paperwork in a row, so your company's house registration, any VAT filings. Ask around your household, or indeed your apartment building, if you live in a larger community, if anyone else has an Amazon seller account. There could be an issue where Amazon sees that someone else might have tried to set up a seller account, and they match IP addresses, or they match postcodes or whatever, and they say, we're not going to let you do this. So just better to know that before you start. Once you've got all that in a row, you can go through the process of getting your account established. I have known some people to have this basically instantly approved, and all of a sudden you have access to the UK and all European marketplaces, and other people who have gone through weeks of uploading documentation over and over and over again. Perfectly legitimate documentation for the company's house, or UK driver's license, UK passport. It can be quite challenging. It's also a little bit inconsistent. So I'm a Canadian citizen and not a UK citizen. I cannot sell in the Middle East. Amazon will not accept Canadian citizens as proof of ID for the Middle East, not yet at least. So I can sell in pretty much any other market, just not the Middle East. So again, have a look at the rules for onboarding into each marketplace. If you are going to sell in the EU, you will need some VAT compliance. I'm not an expert in that field, but Amazon has services that are. I do know that it can take months to get that accomplished, particularly in Germany. When we registered for a German VAT, it took 3 months to do. So you cannot sell until you have that level of compliance in place in the EU. So just be careful of that. Right. I think because of time, I will now wind up here. I think I'll turn over to Nauser to discuss further, and then perhaps we can come back for Q&A. So I hope you have found that very, very useful and informative. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me there, Chris? Great. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chris. That was quite interesting. I wanted to ask you a question before I go on to the slide. The world is moving towards green sustainability. In terms of packaging for Amazon, where do you see that going? How and what would you advise the attendees, please?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question, Nasser. That's absolutely fantastic. It's a fascinating space that we're in. I've been talking with a number of people who are very, very experienced in hospitality, and what I'm learning there is a number of products that are being delivered to restaurants and so on and so forth are not being delivered in cardboard packaging anymore, but they're experimenting with seaweed-based packaging. Would you believe it's much more biodegradable and just a more reliable resource apparently. So that is quite interesting. Amazon have been moving towards sustainability now for a number of years. So they're starting internally first. They recognize that because they do millions of orders, not only in the UK, but worldwide, each one of those orders has to have that sort of paper, crinkly packaging. It's got to come in a box. The box needs to be right size. If you ever receive an Amazon box or an envelope, you can turn it over and you'll see a letter number combination, A9 or C4, whatever the case might be. That will be specific to the size of the box. They have been looking at the sizes of those boxes and making sure that the size of box is more consistent with the product itself. So I have received products like a mobile phone in a very large box, which is ridiculous. There's a lot of extra space there. It's light, but consider that when a tiny product in a big box is with other tiny products in big boxes in a van, you could have put a lot more product in that same van before you use that van's, natural gas or petrol or electricity or whatever. So they've been looking at the entire process and making sure things are more efficient. We have moved towards doing a lot of recycling of Amazon boxes. So for our merchant fulfilled orders, we'll take an Amazon box. I don't have a concern with that. The nature of our product is such that the customer is not really expecting this big fancy box. So I'm okay with sending my product out in an Amazon box that I've received. It's not beautiful, but the impact on resources and the environment is much, much less. Amazon have also put in policies where they will not accept shipments into their warehouses that have environmentally unfriendly packaging. So for example, those little styrofoam peanuts, they don't like those anymore. It causes a mess all over the place, but also it's not recyclable. They can't really do anything with that. So they're not happy to receive that sort of dunnage, that sort of vacuum space filler. They'd rather have shredded cardboard, which I'm sure you've seen before. So old boxes that can't be used for packaging anymore can be shredded and used for space filler. In the EU is taking the lead. So I glossed over this pretty quickly, but Germany and France are now requiring sellers, manufacturers, other suppliers, resellers, and so on to register with their environmental programs and certify that their shipping and packaging and so on is environmentally friendly. So we are looking at our products, removing the plastic trays that might hold a little toy car or something, and looking at producing that in a different way. Of course, a lot of our stock comes from China, so that means that we have the entire supply chain that we have to discuss right back to the manufacturer to say, okay, the world is moving this way. We have to change the packaging. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to sell this anymore. Hope that helps.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris, because as we know, we're all regular buyers. We get these huge, boxes for very small items, and sometimes I get a bit concerned of the wastage. But I understand that they buy in millions, so they can afford to sort of recycle and buy recyclable stuff as well. So I take some heart, from that I'm hopefully not adding to landfill too much by buying on Amazon. I think that's important from a seller point of view as well.
It's very, very important. And sometimes also this is a whole conversation in and of itself, but sometimes it's really quite frustrating because, as I mentioned earlier, Amazon had all these different warehouses up and down the country, and my stock, your stock, their stock is not going to be in a specific shelf, a specific warehouse. So if you buy product A, product B, and product C, they could be coming from 3 different warehouses, which means that you've got an envelope for one, a box for another, and some sort of other packaging for the third. That's concerning because it would have been much more environmentally efficient to have them all in one, but now you have 3 types of packaging. So that is an ongoing conversation.
Okay, thank you for that, Chris. Excellent. Okay, so to bring the program, to bring the session to a close, we've got a great a new schedule, which is our next session is on the 10th, where you'll have Nicola again. This is an advanced one. This is about lead generation. So a lot of you attended the first one on the 10th of February. So please come back again on the 10th of March. And she'll take you through using what you learned earlier about creating an effective sort of presence, and then hoping to develop a new leads and invest in a lead generation exercise. Followed by that, a business model. We will look at your online model. Are you ready to go online? This is further to what Chris discussed here today. So that's a very interactive conversation as well, where we'll use a canvas. So don't miss it. You have the links. You'll be sent a new links again next week. And then on after Easter, we have social media for business, websites that work, SEO, video marketing, YouTube, etc., Instagram, all of that that'll be on the 20th of April within the social media. You've got email marketing, including GDPR, which is becoming a big thing now. It's important. How do you build lists? What platforms you use? What costs not, etc. And then we look at some CRM systems at the end of July, in early July as well. There are, a lot of you, I think, already have contacted Nicola for one-to-ones. Chris, have you talked about your one-to-ones and your availability for your 15 minutes, free sessions?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'd be delighted to have one-to-ones. So what I'll do is a little bit later this morning, I'll send you a booking link if you kindly cascade that to the audience. Anyone who wants to have a one-to-one with me and talk about any question that you might have about either e-commerce in general or Amazon in specific, I'd be happy for you to click through that link and book some time with me. I've got some good availability over the next, tomorrow and into next week. Yeah, that's a quick 15-minute conversation, and I'd be delighted to answer any sort of specific question that's not appropriate for this more public forum here.
Okay, so here's an offer to you all. If after the 15 minutes free session with Chris, you believe you need a longer session, an hour session on a specific issue, and use up Chris's time, etc. If you want to come back to Chris and come back to me on that, we'll be happy to fund that with you as well. So I'll have a conversation with Chris over the next few days. But in the meantime, I would urge you to take advantage of the free offer, book your session with Chris, and see what comes out of it. Okay.
I'm looking forward to working with you on that.
Any more slides there, Chris? Can we change over?
Yeah, I think we do. Let's go to this one here.
So we talked about that just now, the one-to-ones, again, available to you, so we can, that's it now. Okay.
Sorry, should I continue?
Yeah, that's fine, that's fine, okay.
There we go.
Okay, so the one-to-ones overall, you can talk to Nicola, as I'm sure a few of you are already, but if you need help with Amazon, with selling online, then Chris is your man. He's the expert. Free session. If you need more work with him, please come back to me. Okay, many thanks again. Okay.
Great. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to take back the host again from you, Chris. And I'll end the webinar now. Stop the recording. Many thanks for your help. See you soon, and Chris will send you the links. And the webinar recording will be up on our YouTube channel shortly. Okay.
Great.
All the best.
Nazir,
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the
Take care.
attendees.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.